and I don't even care if anyone calls me a Sally, because I'm a snail and I never gonna fail. And you know what? You're gonna have to bail me out of jail.
That is Nick Reiner in a bizarre video that it appears he posted to YouTube.
Everyone wants to know how you get your exercise in because you're so lean.
I do it like ISIS. I usually only do one at a time.
What this video may tell us about the odd behavior of a man who struggled with addiction and is now accused of using a knife to kill his parents in a brutal double murder. We're on The Case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey, before we get into the latest on this case, I want to talk about one of the biggest partners and sponsors for On the Case, which is one of the most watched shows on YouTube. It's America's largest personal injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan, a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million, 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can also click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. I really don't know what to make of this video that Nick Reiner apparently put on YouTube back in 2016. I will show you some really odd clips here in just a moment. Now, this video is 6 minutes and 34 seconds long. It's titled David. It's the only video posted to an account with Nick's name.
This is one of my favorite reads when I'm sitting on by the campfire or like relaxing in Malibu.
In this video, you hear Nick talking in this really odd voice, and the video is not only odd, it's somewhat chilling and disturbing when you think of what he is now accused of doing to his own parents. His parents, of course, Hollywood legend Rob Reiner, the director and actor known for putting together films like When Harry Met Sally and A Few Good Men, and Rob's longtime wife, Nick's mom, Michele Reiner, both of them found dead in their mansion in the ritzy Brentwood section of Los Angeles. Now, big update that came in from TMZ today has to do with the mental health of Nick Reiner. The outlet claims that Nick Reiner was diagnosed with schizophrenia in the weeks leading up to Rob and Michele Reiner's murders. The outlet also cites a source claiming that the meds were making Nick erratic and dangerous. A key part to understanding Nick Reiner is that this is someone in his 32 years of life faced a lot of challenges, fought a lot of demons, especially addiction. Nick first went to rehab when he was just 15 years old. He told People magazine in 2016 that he also went back to rehab more than a dozen times by the age of 18, and he spent time homeless in Maine, New Jersey, and Texas. In his mid-20s, which would be around the time that he posted that odd YouTube video, it appears that he was trying a career in his dad's line of work, show business. In 2016, a movie titled Being Charlie was released. This was a movie that Nick wrote and his legendary dad directed. The film was loosely based on Nick's life. It follows a character who struggles with heroin addiction and homelessness.
If your kid is going through rough times, you know, the parent your main job is to keep your child safe. So
this is an interview that Rob and Nick did together during a press tour for that movie Being Charlie. And this was just a clip from AOL's Build series that is posted publicly on YouTube. It is getting a lot of attention because of what they talk about. Nick and Rob go on about what doing a movie together meant to their relationship.
I think the bonding came not from the story itself, but from the fact that we were working on a movie together.
Now, through Being Charlie, you just get the sense that Rob Reiner really loved his son. And one of the most tragic parts of this story, beyond, of course, the loss of life inside of this home, the loss of a titan of Hollywood, is that it doesn't appear that the Reiners ever gave up on their son, Nick. And they were there for him to the sad, sad end. Rob and Michele Reiner wanted Nick to be with them the night before he allegedly took their lives. There's been a lot of talk about this holiday party that was at Conan O'Brien's house the night before the Reiners were found dead. And there's this article that the Hollywood Reporter put together that I think is really important because it talks about some of the dynamics surrounding this party and what led to a apparently very public argument, a loud argument that Nick and Rob had at Conan's house in the hours before Nick allegedly killed Rob and Michele. Now, Nick wasn't invited to this party at Conan's house, but Rob and Michele were invited, and they asked Conan if it would be okay for their son to tag along, and Conan reportedly said that would be okay. It does appear, though, that things got awkward and disturbing pretty fast at this party because Nick was reportedly described as acting erratic. It was described that he was wandering around this party, interrupting conversations. I mean, conversations among some pretty big names in Hollywood. And the Hollywood Reporter says that Nick was actually going up to people at this party and asking to know if they were famous, kind of demanding to know who they were. Nick was acting so odd. Apparently there were people at this party who had wondered if he was someone who just wandered in off the street. But in fact, he was the son of one of the most notable people at this party, Rob Reiner. Now, this is part of that story that I want to read for you because it really stood out to me. One of the people who Nick allegedly talked to at this party, demanding to know who they were and if they were famous, is actor, comedian, and former SNL star Bill Hader. The Hollywood Reporter writes, quote, Hader calmly responded to Nick that he was engaged in a private conversation. This is according to someone with knowledge of the situation. Nick glared at him for what felt like an uncomfortable amount of time. That really just paints a picture of how Nick was possibly acting in the hours surrounding the time that police say he killed his parents. Now, the loud argument that has made a lot of headlines between Nick and his dad at this party was allegedly over Rob confronting Nick about just how rude and bizarre his son was reportedly acting at this party, in a party being attended by so many big names, so many friends of his parents. Now, you hear that alleged account of what happened at the party, and then you watch this YouTube video, which, yes, it's from roughly a decade ago, 9 years ago, but you still can somewhat tell how Nick acted and just how bizarre his behavior could be. Take a look.
And I don't even care if anyone calls me a Sally because I'm a snail and I'm never gonna fail. And you know what? You're gonna have to bail me out of jail.
So it's unclear what the purpose of this video was. It is possible that Nick maybe was trying to get into acting and he was just putting something together to show people in the business. It is, again, the only video that is posted to this YouTube account. Watch this part.
Well, I ain't gonna tell you my first and last name. Most people know me as David.
We're wondering
Do you
what...
know how long this interview is gonna be?
Now, in the video, he says his name is David. That's the name of the video as well. Kind of just talks in that odd voice. He's walking around what appears to be his parents' neighborhood while wearing sunglasses and a red hat.
No introduction. Jenny from the cul-de-sac, of course. She has a boyfriend now who's in the military. He's actually dead. She's died in Iraq. She moved to Patagonia. What was it? I'm gonna go kill that.
Now, it doesn't appear that Nick did much professionally after the movie Being Charlie that his dad directed. His IMDb page lists Being Charlie as his only movie. And then there's some podcasts and shows that he appeared on, which appears to be roughly around the time that he did Being Charlie.
Why do you like so much?
Mainly because when I'm done drinking it, I can go in my room and squirt lotion in it and then use it to stick my in. They were like practically just the whole time.
Yeah, it's just an incredibly disturbing behavior for someone who reportedly was spiraling for a long time and continuing to fight addiction and potentially find his place in the world. There's also a report that came out from the Daily Mail that is claiming that Rob Reiner confided in someone at Conan's party that not only was his son maybe acting odd and rude, but that Rob was potentially scared of Nick. According to the Daily Mail, Rob Reiner said at the party, quote, as one of the gathered A-listers told it, minutes after Nick stormed out, Rob became emotional, going over to a group of friends and saying, quote, I'm petrified of him. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm afraid of my son. I think my own son can hurt me. Now, again, that's just from the Daily Mail. It has not been confirmed that this was actually said, but it is notable when you consider what happened allegedly hours later. And when we talk about the sibling of Nick, his sister, who reportedly found, according to TMZ, her parents inside the home, Romy Reiner allegedly told police that Nick could be violent and that he's someone that police should look at. So there's something more going on than just the battles of addiction. There was potential violent behavior beforehand, according to these news reports. Now, we are still waiting on an official time of death for the Reiners. Now, this is the rough timeline, though, of what potentially happened. Police have not yet said officially when the Reiners were killed, but it obviously happened at some point after this party and perhaps before 4 o'clock in the morning. I say that time because media outlets are reporting that Nick checked into a hotel in Santa Monica, about 4 miles from his parents' house, with a credit card. Staff the next day went into the room where he was staying, and they made an incredibly disturbing find. They say not only were bed sheets covering the windows, but there was a lot of blood in that room, specifically in the shower. Now, the Reiners weren't found until 3:30 Sunday afternoon. According to KTLA, the couple was found dead in their bed. They had been stabbed multiple times, according to the medical examiner in Los Angeles. A massage therapist reportedly could not get in touch with the Reiners, so it was their daughter, Romy, who lived across the street, who went into the home, this is according to People, and discovered what had happened. She apparently only saw her dad, and she didn't know that her mom was also dead, and it was first responders who had to tell her that later. Now, when the bodies were discovered, Nick was nowhere to be found, and that's when Romy, apparently, according to TMZ, told police that she was aware that her brother had issues, and she suggested that police try to find him because he has the ability to be dangerous. And this is video of Nick Reiner at a gas station near the campus of the University of Southern California. This is in the area of Exposition Park, so we're talking roughly 15 miles inland from his parents' home in LA. And this was right before he was arrested by the LAPD. NBC Los Angeles was the first outlet to get this video, and you can see Reiner wearing a jacket and a hat. He also has a red backpack, and it appears he goes in and he buys a Gatorade, and then he walks across the street, and that is when the LAPD pulls up, lights and sirens, and they put him under arrest. Then you have days later, the Los Angeles District Attorney, after so much speculation from media outlets, announcing the charges that Nick is now facing. Now, the DA did talk about the death penalty. It's important to note in California, there's been a moratorium on that since 2019, and no one has been put to death in the state of California since 2006. But it's notable that the DA threw that out there. Nick has yet to enter a plea, though, on those charges. In court this week, his high-powered attorney, Alan Jackson, very notable from the Karen Reed trial, he told the court that he needs more time before an official arraignment. Nick spoke 3 words when the judge asked him if he was waiving his right to a speedy trial. Here's that moment.
Mr. Reiner, do you have a constitutional and statutory right to speedy arraignment? Your counsel is requesting that your arraignment be continued to January 7, 2026. Do you waive your right to a speedy arraignment so that your arraignment can be heard on January 7, 2026?
Quote, "Yes, Your Honor." The only words Nick said. During that court hearing, he was taken back to the county jail where he is right now. The judge didn't allow media members to take pictures or video of Nick in court. We're told he sat in an enclosed area, but courtroom sketches show him wearing a blue vest that defendants do often wear so they don't harm themselves. Now, this is what Nick's attorney, Alan Jackson, said after court.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just have a couple of quick words. First of all, and most importantly, this is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family. There are very, very complex and serious issues that are associated with this case. These need to be thoroughly but very carefully dealt with and examined and looked at and analyzed. We ask that process you allow the system to move forward in the way that it was designed to move forward. Not with a rush to judgment, not with jumping to conclusions, but with restraint and with dignity and with the respect that this system and this process deserves and that the family deserves. So with that, we are set for January 7th for an arraignment. That's the next court date. And that's all I have to say at this point. There may be more at some other point, but today we're going to rest on where we stand procedurally, which is this was a continuance of arraignment. Nothing happened today substantively. We'll be back for an arraignment in the same department on the 7th of January. We'll see you then.
This is what Nick's two surviving siblings are now saying. Again, you think of his sister, who was the one who reportedly found her parents dead. This statement is per CBS News. Quote, "Words cannot even describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing every moment of the day. The horrific and devastating loss of our parents, Rob and Michele Reiner, is something that no one should ever experience. They weren't just our parents, they were our best friends. We are grateful for the outpouring of condolences, kindness, and support we have received, not only from family and friends, but people from all walks of life. We now ask for respect and privacy, for speculation to be tempered with compassion and humanity, for our parents to be remembered for the incredible lives they lived and the love they gave." And you will notice in that statement, they do not mention their brother Nick. Joining us now to talk a little bit more about this investigation is Mike King, the host of Profiling Evil, also a retired police commander. Mike, I know you have a new podcast that's coming out early next year, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Thanks as always for being with us to talk about these cases. And for you as someone who's, killers and what can go into their minds. And in this case, Nick Reiner is accused of being one. What stands out to you about him thus far?
For me, Chris, because of the time of year, I've been really thinking a lot about the family dynamic and this kind of thing that we have inside, especially parents, to bring family members together, whether it's to capture that family photo at the perfect time or to maybe just create and have another good memory. And I think when I'm thinking about this case, I think about the risk that increases for family members, and I wonder how that will play out in the entire Reiner story. But for me personally, as I look at this case and I reflect back on other homicides that have occurred, especially during the holidays, I think about what were the precipitating factors that were involved, what was leading up to this thing, what caused allegedly a Nick Reiner to act out in this kind of a way. Was there a family argument beforehand? Were there mental health issues? And there are suggestions that there may be some of those, or substance abuse issues. But all of those play such a significant role. And as part of this true crime genre that you and I are involved in, it's not only telling these stories, but it's seeing what we can learn from it. So I've been really thinking a lot about the risk that we're willing to take in times like this, the holidays.
Yeah, and it's just, I find myself with this story just thinking about, here's Rob Reiner. Everybody knows his movies. I mean, this is a man who, is a titan of Hollywood, but still, like, this family struggled in some ways like a lot of families do when it comes to addiction. And the thing I keep thinking about is, like, they really loved Nick Reiner, it appears, to the very end, because he struggled with addiction, for so long. At the same time, I also think of, like, there are a lot of families that struggle with addiction and it doesn't end with someone killing two people, which is what he's accused of doing. Like, how have you seen, I guess in your career, like someone with his type of background and struggles and the demons that he faced, how often does that actually translate to something like this?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think it is the anomaly, that it is the exception. Most families have to deal with arguments over politics at the Thanksgiving table, or the weird uncle who always has some kind of a bizarre comment that he makes. But when you're dealing with mental illness, or you're dealing with substance abuse, or you're dealing with maybe some sudden ultimatums that come down, like a parent that tries to hold the line on behavior, and it's no longer the 9-year-old boy that you're trying to hold down and control. It's now an adult man who has got a whole bunch of other things going on, has physical prowess over you. We have to look at the fact that the Reiners physically too were older, and so you start bringing all these dynamics together, and it's just like the holiday crock pot that's slowly simmering and getting hotter and hotter. And if there's not a release valve on that crock pot, there would be a disaster. And in most families, that release valve continues to happen, whether it's a parent who somehow knows how to rudder the situation and get things settled back down, or a person who is volatile, putting themselves in check and backing away. But from time to time, we see when it overloads and explodes like this, and then we see this horrible tragedy unfold.
And it really is. And from the legal perspective, he's facing these 2 counts of first-degree murder. And so prosecutors believe there's some level of premeditation that was involved. We know that they believe that he used a knife. It's unclear if they have the murder weapon. And it's believed that the Reiners potentially, maybe they were sleeping, they were in their bed. How do you prove that in a case like this, that something was premeditated?
Well, I think it goes back to a couple of really simple things that you've already started to lay the groundwork for. Did the knife, for instance, in this particular case, originate in the home, or did it originate in Nick Reiner's possession, or whoever the killer's possession was before they came to the residence? And we don't know if everything is pointing toward that there was no signs of break-in and other things. And it appears that the prosecution has a pretty strong case that identifies, and that's why they're alleging that Nick Reiner committed this homicide or these homicides. But where did that knife originate? Are there defensive wounds or blood in other locations of the house that would suggest that this wasn't just confined to the bedroom? Is there a moment in time where there was frustration? Was there an argument before the deaths occurred? Something that would precipitate and lean us toward the idea that somebody made the mental decision that homicide makes sense, and then they physically acted it out. And that's what you need for premeditation.
Do you need, and it's unclear, I know that prosecutors were asked about this, of whether they actually have the murder weapon. Is that something that you would I guess how important would that be to prosecuting a case against Nick Reiner if that's not there?
Well, I mean, obviously you want to have it because you want to be able to show the DNA transfer. You want to be able to show transfers. You want to be able to show that the knife is consistent with the wounds, that the knife is consistent through DNA with Nick Reiner, and you want to be able to tie that thing together. But, I mean, there are a lot of murder cases where we don't end up having a weapon or that we don't even have a body in some murder cases. And so it becomes a totality issue because oftentimes we think, oh, well, there was an eyewitness or a confession that was made. If we proceeded in criminal cases on one sole piece of evidence, I think we would be really mishandling criminal cases. I think it would be unfair for the defense and for the prosecution. And so what we see in criminal cases today is we see a combination of physical evidence, forensic evidence. We hear about maybe admissions or confessions. We have eyewitness accounts or other kinds of things that build these cases together. And in reality, we talk about circumstantial evidence a lot in no-body cases. Well, circumstantial evidence is more valuable than any of those because it's the thing that in totality says A plus B equals C. And I think that that's what we're seeing in this particular case is that the prosecution's going to come forward. They're already telling us some things that we can envision. They're telling us that the Reiners died from incision and stab wounds. That gives us an idea. We don't know how many wounds. We don't know where those wounds were. But each of those things are going to give us an indication behaviorally of what the motivations were. We're going to see whether there were defensive wounds, cuts on the Reiner fingers, other things that suggest that they were aware that these homicides were being inflicted on them. All of that is going to be circumstantial in nature while it's individually physical or forensic evidence. Does that make sense?
No, it certainly does. And I think, the other part too, like not just the murder weapon, because we don't know if they have it, but now that Alan Jackson is in the fold, and I'm always fascinated by defense attorneys who are just really good at what they do, and he's certainly, what a year he's had, as we kind of wrap up this year, when you think of Karen Reed and what he was able to do there. How does he, as someone who is going to dig into every nook and cranny of an investigation, he certainly can make a prosecutor's life difficult, but as an investigator, as you're putting together the case, you're gathering the evidence, and then you realize that you have someone like him who is going to question every little step along the way, like what type of stress does that potentially put on the investigators who are trying to gather all of this?
Well, for the investigator, hopefully it doesn't change their paradigm much at all, because they're focused on just providing factual evidence and then allowing the prosecutor to decide what those charges should look like or how they should be presented in the courtroom. So maybe it's, how does an Alan Jackson impact the multiple disciplines that are now involved in this case? Because after the fact, if past behavior is predictive of future behavior, we may see Jackson attacking the investigation, the personality of the police officers, the manner and method in which they conducted the crime scene. We may see challenges against the prosecution in evidentiary areas, or in hearings we may see challenges. We may see stories created that have nothing to do with the evidence, but create this backswirl of activity that could potentially impact a jury pool, just like what you and I do could potentially impact a jury pool. So I think that the face of criminal justice has changed dramatically in the last couple of years because of what true crime enthusiasts have done, what reporting has done, what traditional respected journalism, like what you do at Law&Crime, or what the local newspaper does under legal responsibilities, versus what might happen in a online post by somebody that's not vetted, that's conspiratorial or other things. I think the nature of criminal justice has changed dramatically. I worry that we may see, as a result of all of this, a limiting of our access to the criminal justice system because of what we, the public and the online creators, have created, that it might cause courts to withdraw a little more, to make things a little less available so that the criminal justice system can proceed the way it should. And you know what? I salute guys like Alan Jackson. I don't necessarily like it when I'm on the other side and I've got a defense attorney pounding my personality, but I'm grateful that we have a defense strategy in the criminal justice system, because when someone's found guilty, we should walk away feeling like, hey, both sides of the story were heard.
No, and very, very good point there. And I think too, and it's a long way to go. I mean, this could be a long time until if this actually goes to trial, of when that could happen. But because of the work that Nick did on a movie in 2016 and how often he's talked about his addiction, and then you have all these reports about how he was apparently spiraling in the months before, like, it's going to be hard to find jurors who probably don't know anything about him, or that he won't look at him through the lens of someone who is an addict because he was so public about it. With the holiday party at Conan's the night before, how much could that, for investigators, you think of the big names who were there. Bill Hader was a name that there was just some interaction. There was an anecdote in this Hollywood Reporter article. Are investigators, how much focus are they going to put on this party? Because you did have this argument between Nick and Rob, and Nick was apparently acting just very bizarre, a little bit rude at this party hours before Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead.
I think it's going to play a huge role, and rightly so, because again, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, it is as much about the precipitating factors, the things that led up to an event like a homicide, that becomes so important. And it's going to be important to understand, were there comments made that were predictive of some violent act like this? Were there things that suggest that that Nick Reiner was completely off of his game on that particular night, or that he was inappropriate, or that he was aggressive, or that the Reiners themselves, Rob and Michele, were toning him down or trying to control him, or maybe, and I hate to use the word humiliating him, but trying to settle him down in a way in front of their peers that he may have taken as humiliation and become a moment of contention for him. So all of that is going to be incredibly important, because while we talk about those other forms of evidence, the one form of evidence we don't often talk about that should be spoken about a lot in criminal cases is the behaviors of the victims, the behaviors of the perpetrators, everyone, and all of those fill and feed in to what oftentimes eventually happens.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens next. Just an incredibly sad case. I think that's something that everybody can agree on. And there's probably so many similar words that we could use to describe it. Mike King, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. I know you you do great work on profiling evil. People need to check that out. But also you have a podcast coming out early next year. What do people need to know about it?
Oh, hey, thanks, Chris, because I'm really excited about this. It's based on my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. And it is the podcast is dropping on February 3rd. It's called Gardens of Evil, Inside the Zion Society Cult. And it is an incredible 7-part series on the American Nightmares podcast series. It's season 5 of American Nightmares. And this is a way where people can actually hear about what happened in this cult, not only from me, but from the survivors of the cult. We rescued 32 children in that case, Chris. We have the voices of these people who are now women who are in their 40s and 50s talking about the abuses they endured in the cult. We have police officers who were there on the day we raided those homes with 70 police officers. We have the prosecutor, and we have many other people. So this is a podcast that's filled with the voices of the people who were part of it. And while it talks about and mentions the horrible abuses that occurred, it's a story about resilience and about the survivors and how they made their lives something accomplishable.
That sounds incredible. I can't wait to listen. February 3rd, that comes out. A lot of us will be tuning in for that. The host of Profiling Evil, Mike King, retired police commander, one of the best people we have here at Law and Crime to break down stories just like this one.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you as always for being with us.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Nick Reiner is due back in court January 7th. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.